Good kid internet. Today is the 24th of December, so Christmas Eve. And what better way to talk about the holidays than to talk about computer security? Okay, I know, it's not the most exciting topic in the world. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I wanted to talk about it and explain how I handle passwords, and specifically passwords dealing with online websites and that type of thing. So I should probably explain myself, especially since I expect the YouTube algorithm to pick up on this and show this video to other people. I am aetherspoon. In my offline career, I have been a systems administrator for about 20 years, and I am currently a security software engineer. I've only been doing that for about a year now, but so I actually have a fairly lengthy history with security. On top of that, I am aetherspoon. For those that may know the archives of internet lore, I used to be a moderator on a website called GameFAQs, and this would have been over 20 years ago. My account was actually broken into because of bad password policies, and that's why I wanted to talk with you about this today. Well, today was specifically because of the news. I don't know if you have seen the news, but LastPass, which is one of the leading online cloud-based password vaults, databases, whatever you want to call them, has been broken into, and somebody's stolen a lot of data. And a lot of commentary from some of my friends included things like, well, I'm glad I don't use password vaults and I just reuse the same passwords everywhere. No, please no. Please don't do that. That's why I'm recording this video right now, is to explain how I do this, which is a reasonably secure manner. If you want to take a look at this article, I will try to remember to put a link down in the description. Ars Technica has a good summary of things. And long story short, don't trust LastPass. In fact, you probably shouldn't trust any cloud service or any service at all that you do not control all of the steps of. I suppose it's time for me to explain. I use a program called KeePass. Right now, I've just spun up a quick Windows 11 VM. So yes, this is what Windows 11 looks like for people who don't use Windows 11. I don't have Windows 11 on my main machine. Ew, ads. This is very obviously not my normal machine. And I wanted to show you KeePass. KeePass is an open source password safe that stores everything local to your computer. This is effectively a much fancier version of writing down all of your passwords in a notepad and putting it by your computer. The main difference is that KeePass actually encrypts your data, and you need a password or some other authentication method in order to be able to open your KeePass database, and that's it. Just saves on your computer. There's no cloud involved or anything like that. I will explain how I handle this in a bit. And it just kind of works. But there's a little bit more to it than that. So the first thing that I did was that I downloaded KeePass for you, or for us. So I'm just going to go ahead and walk through the install really fast. It's a really simple, this is... so you will notice this on some open source software, is that they will have a license agreement that is actually the GNU General Public License, or GNU GPL. This is GPL v2. It is an open source license that basically says, hey, look, if you edit parts of this as in editing source code, not making changes to your password database, you need to release it again also as the general public license. None of these license terms are really going to matter all that much to you as an individual that might be consuming this. So we're going to go ahead and accept the agreement. It's going to ask to save this into a default location. It's fine. It doesn't really matter. This is a really tiny product, by the way. Like it's 3.7 megabytes. I frequently save this in a easily accessible location in the event that something goes horribly wrong and I need to access my password database from, say, somebody else's machine or something like that. Again, I will explain how I handle the online parts at a later part of this video. I just want to show the basics first. So we're just going to go ahead and accept defaults for everything. It is going to have a file association of kdbx. Don't worry about it, it should be fine. And normally I can't stand desktop shortcuts and things like that. In this case, I'm creating one specifically so it's easier for me to launch. How you doing? It's Christmas Eve and I'm recording a video about passwords, so you can tell how my weekend's going, and it's done. I did not cut out any of that for reference. There was no need to. We are also going to open up the plugins webpage, but we will get to that later. So the first thing that happens when you open this up is it'll ask if you want to enable an automatic update check. This is just going to pop up with a little notification whenever you launch KeePass saying that there's an update to either KeePass or one of the components of KeePass that you're looking at or you're trying to use. I recommend keeping it automatically up to date because if there are security exploits to KeePass, they'll be patched. So this is what KeePass looks like. And this is what Boo Kitty looks like. Boo Kitty was just saying meow and saying hi. Do you want to say hi again? She doesn't like meowing when she's up on my shoulder like that. Anyway, so this is what KeePass looks like. You will notice that this is blank. We don't have a database open right now, so there's not really much here. What we're going to want to do in this case is to create a new database. Your data will be stored in a KeePass database file, which is a regular file. After clicking OK, you'll be prompted to specify the location where KeePass should save this file. It's important that you remember where the database file is located. You should regularly create a backup of this database file onto an independent data storage device. What this is saying is, hey, look, we're going to create your password database, but look, if you lose this, you're going to lose all your passwords. Store it someplace you're going to find it, and actually back the thing up. This is one of the very, very few things that I will get rather upset at people for not backing up, because this is potentially your livelihood. Hold on a moment. I'm going to look up the actual number really fast. All right, I finished looking it up. I have 550 unique passwords saved to my KeePass database. If I were to lose my KeePass database, I'm screwed. That would be my Google account, Twitch account, YouTube, all of the YouTube happy fun things that I have to deal with. Let's see what else, email accounts, banking information, all of that stuff is saved in my KeePass database. My KeePass database is the single most backed up item that I own. It is backed up in 17 separate locations across multiple continents. So outside of a full-on nuclear war, it's going to survive. And once more, I'll explain how I handle the online components of this at a later point of this video. So we're going to go ahead and create a new database. For this particular example, I'm just going to save it in my documents. Once more, I will explain a little bit later what I actually do, but you know what? We're going to call this YouTube. If I can type, that would be great. My keyboard is right in front of my microphone right here, so it's a little awkward for me to type. YouTube database. Now, the very first thing it's going to ask you once you create a database is for a password. You will notice that you can click these three dots here and actually type in whatever you want. And you'll also notice that this is a pretty terrible password. Yes, I am sorry, but saving your password database with the password of password is not exactly going to be the greatest quality. I highly recommend that people type out to their initial master password something visible, unless if you're in a situation where somebody else might be able to see your monitor. I'm obviously, this isn't my real password database. There's a reason why I've created this video this way. We're going to use one of my standard crappy passwords of OMG kittens. This is also a very terrible password for reference. What I would actually recommend for a password is, yeah, actually we'll use this as our password because it's Christmas Eve. So we're going to go with walking in a winter wonderland. You will notice that this is actually a fairly strong password, even though it's a sentence. And I would not recommend walking in a Wonderland in particular. Personally, a lot of my passwords that I actually do need to remember are random phrases with words swapped or just weird associations that my brain has, but complete with full punctuation. Because punctuation gives you symbols. You will have uppercase and lowercase, assuming that you type sentences properly. You may or may not have numbers in your passphrase. I would highly recommend having a number in there somewhere, not the substitution like W0. That you'll notice that this estimated quality didn't really change all that much. What you actually want to do is things like, we're going to be walking in 17 winter wonderlands. Now you'll notice that the estimated quality is up to 108 bits. It's also 33 characters long, which is a really long password. I really like long passwords myself for things that I have to remember. And you'll notice that I keep using that phrase, things that I have to remember. That's because almost all of those 550 passwords that I have, I don't remember. I have no idea what they are. I don't know what my Google password is at all. So you also have some other options that you can do, and I'm briefly going to cover this. A key file / provider. A key file would allow you to use a security key, which is basically a tiny little public and private key that you might have on a keychain, or there's a product called YubiKey, for an example, that does such a thing. Or you might just have the file that you store on a flash drive, and just that's how you log into your database. Whatever it is, do not save your key file in the same location as your database. That's dumb. I don't recommend using a key file for regular, ordinary people right now, because we don't have great ways of handling those keys. If you were a little bit more advanced, a product such as a YubiKey would not necessarily be a bad idea. In fact, that's probably the most secure way that you can handle this. The other option is your Windows user account. You can have it to where your password database basically goes, hey, look, who's logged in? Oh, it's me. We're cool. And that's it. The problem is that, one, if your account goes away, say, for instance, because your computer went boom, you're kind of SOL. And two, anybody who knows your Windows account credentials, which may be significantly weaker than what you would use for your master key here, can log in. I do not use either one of those. At the moment, I'm actually using a master password for my own. It's because I can't find where my YubiKey went. And what I would like to do is to eventually use the key file / provider, but I'm not going to end up doing that. Especially not for this video. So we're going to create it. And once more, our password is walking in 17 winter wonderlands with an exclamation point at the end. There we go. And now we can name the database. This is our YouTube sample database. You can add in a description, and you can add in a default username for new entries. So for instance, I frequently use the same nick everywhere, which is aetherspoon. So I might decide that my default username for new entries is aetherspoon. In our example, we're going to do YouTube user. From here, you can just click OK and be perfectly fine. I'm just going to quickly go through the other tabs to explain. All right. Final pop-up. I believe this is the final pop-up. It's been a long time since I've created one of these. This is the emergency sheet. This is basically, hey, look, in an emergency, somebody should be able to open my password database. If you were trying to set this up for yourself and something were to happen to you, and you want to make sure that a loved one is able to get at your banking records and so on, to be able to close accounts and so on, what you might want to do is print out a password sheet, and then, or print out this emergency sheet, which I'm going to go ahead and have it print to a PDF really fast, so we can see what it looks like. I think Windows 11 has a default PDF viewer, doesn't it? Yeah. So this includes a little piece of paper that's basically, hey, look, this is where I saved my password at. This is what the password is, and this is how you open things. What you would do is that you'd print this out, fill it out, fold it up, and stick it in like a safe deposit box, or in your important papers box that's locked, or anything that's secure. These will come with a couple of sample passwords. You can even double click and take a look at what they look like. So this is what any of the entries in the password database looks like. It'll have a title. This title is to make it easier for you to search. So for instance, if I was trying to create an account on Nation States, a very old forum/online game to advertise a book called Jennifer Government that was released 20 years ago, I might call this, if I can spell today, I might call this Jennifer Government /Nation States. Username should be fairly self-explanatory. Password, if you click the dots, you'll be able to see. This is a sample password. Password's just password. The quality, once more, this is the same thing that we saw when we were creating the, master password. And a URL. The URL is the URL of the website that you want this password to be accessible to. We will get to that in a bit. There's also a notes section. I frequently will put in things like the previous password. The reason why I might want to create a previous password for this is because I'm using a website that forces me to reset my password every 90 days, and sometimes they have to roll back their database. And when they do, that means I need to know my previous password. I don't consider my previous password secure anymore, and it's not going to be a big deal if it's visible in plain text and easily seen if somebody just looks at my notes. But it's important. You can also set an expiration date for the password. This would be useful if, for instance, you know that the password's only going to be good for 90 days. You only have it saved for 90 days. Personally, I don't bother using expirations. There are more things as well. So you can change the icon. You can use any of these default 68 icons, or you can just use a custom icon that's made from an image, whatever you want. But the thing that you really want to look at is over here where it says generate a password. This will allow you to open up the password generator. And this is where the real power of something like KeePass comes into play, is that you can have it generate a random password for you. I am going to have it create a random 42-character upper, lower, digit, special character, and brackets. These are all required. I hit OK. That is now my password. This is how I generate almost all of my passwords, by the way. Can you understand why I don't remember my Google account password now? Yeah. This is the real power of KeePass in my mind, and I'll explain why as we're going along. This button here is to just disable and enable that quality thing. You might as well just keep it enabled. Advanced allows you to fill in other information, so you can use this to fill in an entire form with the various string fields. File attachments. So for instance, if you are a Linux user, you might want to put in a file attachment of your private key to be able to log into an server via SSH, for an example. Or you might have an important document that you want associated with your bank account, and you're going to save it somewhere. You might as well save it here. Or what I actually use it for frequently is license keys for various software products, like, this Windows 11 license that's not actually real. Anyway, there's a lot of reasons why you might want file attachments there, and they're just attaching it into your database. You can double click to open the attachment, or you can save the attachment afterward. You get the idea. Properties is just literally the property of that one object. You can tag things if you want to be able to search for things. I don't use any of this for reference. UUID is just to give it a unique ID for various purposes. You don't need to worry about this. Autotype. Autotype is a very powerful feature. If you want it to, like, you select this password and you choose entered it in, you can have it specifically open up a web browser, go to the correct website, and autotype it into the exact fields that you want. I don't recommend doing that. I'm going to show you what I recommend in a bit, but you can also have autotype be used for things like remoting into servers, which is what I use it for. Or you can have autotype used for, let's say you have a password on an application that's not a web browser. Well, you can have autotype type it in for you. I don't use this very often, mind you, but I do use it. And then you also have a history tab that shows you the last time it's been updated, different versions, because you can view prior versions. Yes, I know that I could have my previous password I can view it via going into the history. I'm not worrying about that. There's some tools here as well that will allow you to copy the initial password. So if I clicked this and say, open up Notepad really fast, I can paste in, that's the prior password. It's the password as of when you opened it up. So if I do that again and copy initial password, see, it's our randomized password. It's really about it for that particular window. You will notice that over here on the left, there's various groups. It's a folder structure. You can organize things as you see fit. Honestly, almost everything's going to end up being shoved into the same folder, and the way I use it, it's not really that big of a deal. Going through the file menu, there's various things like database settings. This is what we had already seen earlier. There's synchronization, which this will become important later on, but for right now, it's not important. Like I had mentioned, adding groups. You can copy an entire group, encrypted or unencrypted. You can print out passwords from here if you're the type that instead in your safety deposit box, you want how to access the passwords. You decide you want in your box all of your passwords. This is how you can do it. Rearrange things, various inputs on the entry. You can duplicate entries in case if you are, say, for instance, using a website that's going to be migrating to a new website and they migrated all of your passwords for you, you might want to duplicate the entry for the new website and then expire the old website once the website goes away. There's a couple of other ways that you can do it too. You can find things. There's a couple of really neat features, like for instance, that you can find duplicate passwords. This particular thing has no duplicate passwords because there's only 2 entries. So let me go add an entry really fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then now when you do duplicate passwords, hey, look, we have duplicate passwords. Oops, did not mean to actually click on it. These 2 accounts have the same password. This is very useful if you're trying to import in your existing accounts and do an audit to go, okay, what am I using stupid passwords for? Well, this would tell you. You can even do things like find similar passwords. Why these are similar passwords, I have no idea. It's probably because I only have 2 passwords. Anyway, you can find clusters of passwords where they're very similar to each other. I think the reason why similar is not working is that there's only 3 passwords in the database. So everything's similar by virtue of nothing being similar. You can also look at your password quality and go, you know what? It's time for me to change my passwords. I'm going to sort by password quality and update all of the ones that have really crappy passwords. Even if you had unique passwords, this would be a good way of doing it. Let's see. Beyond that, there's not really much else that I'm going to be covering right now. Going into options, you can have it set to automatically lock your KeePass database after a certain number of seconds. This is quite a bit useful if you are in an environment where there's more than one person in your home. Like say, for instance, you have siblings and you want your own password database from your siblings because you don't want your sibling to get into your things. This would be a good reason to do it. Or let's say, for instance, you are synchronizing your password and you're using password database and you're using it at work. I would absolutely have it lock. There's both KeePass inactivity and global user inactivity. Global user inactivity is basically like a screensaver. Your computer has been idle for 15 seconds, locks the database. Clipboard auto clear time. When I'll explain how you use this password database, it'll make a little bit more sense. But basically, this is if you copy something to the clipboard from your password database, after, in this case, 12 seconds, it'll clear out the clipboard. There's a bunch of really nitty-gritty detail options down here. Personally, one of the things that I highly recommend doing is, where's that at? It might actually be in a different section now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it's in a different section. Never mind. These are various application policies. I don't bother messing around with these. It's more for administrators than it is for individual end users. This is the one that I'm talking about. Interface. The first thing that I do is that I set it to minimize to tray instead of taskbar. That way, normally it would minimize down into the application area, which on Windows 11 is in the middle of the screen for some reason. This instead minimized to the system tray. So it's now down here. It's just because it's always running in my case. I don't want it to be constantly visible. I also have it set to close button minimizes instead of it closing, because sometimes I'm in the habit of just clicking close, and this way it will just minimize it instead. It's because my KeePass is always running. Those are really the ones that I would highly recommend doing. Everything else is kind of just it's up to you. You can change the appearance of it. Unfortunately, by default in Windows 10, there's not really much that you can do to change the appearance. These are all of the options. There's a plugin that changes it, however, where it's in night mode at all times, which is what I frequently use. See, there's a link to Dark Theme, which is a plugin. Well, it's mentioning how you can make it work for an individual app and outside of KeePass, but if you want to change KeePass's appearance independent of the active system theme, there's the plugin. Let's see. So a couple of other things here in advance that you may want to do is that if you are using a shared computer where multiple people might be using different password databases, uncheck this option that says remember and automatically open last used database. In your case, you'd want to open up a specific database, so you want to keep that unchecked. I highly recommend setting automatically save after modifying an entry using the entry editing dialog, just in case if your computer crashes, so you don't have to remember to click save. If you did not notice, there's an asterisk sitting up the right side of the file name. That's to indicate that the database is currently unsaved. If you use this option, it will probably be constantly saving itself, which is a good thing for the most part. I think that's the only advanced setting I usually set, or that I would recommend setting for most people. Yeah. So, all right, we have this password database. What do we do with it? Well, let me show you the next thing that I do. Over in the KeePass plugins section, there's a lot, and I mean a lot of plugins for KeePass. But there's one specific one that we want, is called KeePass HTTP. So what this does is that it allows you to pass password credentials through to a web page for clients to consume. This is a key part in a two-part plugin type of thing, and I'll be showing both parts, to make it where KeePass is integrated into your web browser and our web browsers of choice. KeePass HTTP is probably the most used plugin for KeePass by a very large margin. It is used by both the add-on for Firefox and the add-on for Chrome. And by add-on for Chrome, I mean add-on from all Chrome-based browsers, including Microsoft Edge, which is actually what's running on here right now, because this is a blank VM. I'm not installing anything special, but the instructions on browser plugins are the same pretty much everywhere. What it does, it is basically a little plugin that allows the web browser add-on to talk to the plugin to go, hey, look, if your password database is open, do you happen to have any passwords for this URL? So we definitely want this. So we are going to install it. It's a very tiny file. And we have instructions on how to install it using various methods. If you use a app manager called Chocolatey, you can just do choco install KeePass-KeePass HTTP. Otherwise, you're going to be doing this manually. And manually is still really simple. What we do is that we want to copy this KeePass HTTP.plgx file. And we are going to browse to Windows, Program Files, KeePass Password Safe, Plugins, and paste it. It will ask if we want, are we sure we want to do this? Because it requires administrative access to update anything inside of C program files. We do in this case. And that's it. We have copied over the plugin. The next time that we launch KeePass, so not what's currently running, but the next time, it'll automatically load up this plugin. If there's any other plugins that we want from here, this is now that when we would install it. The only other one that I might do is it's KeyTheme. KeyTheme, which is what adds the ability to have custom themes, including dark mode support. It's not that big of a deal, but I have it installed. Wanted to mention it. Yeah. So we've got that part, and now we need to restart KeePass. So we're going to go ahead and exit. And yes, whenever I see KeePass, my brain says KeePass instead. Now we have our lovely password. That was walking in 17 Winter Wonderlands. With an exclamation point at the end. I typed it wrong. We're just going to copy and paste it. But walking in 17 Winter Wonderlands. We hit OK. Password database opened right back up. But now if we go to Tools and Plugins, we now see KeePass HTTP sitting here. There's not really any options here for reference. And KeePass will automatically look for updates for both itself and its plugins. So if KeePass HTTP had an update, we would see the update here. However, if you look at KeePass HTTP, the last update was 5 years ago. This is not exactly a thing that needs updating very often, so that's fine. Normally, I'm a little reluctant about security products that haven't been updated recently, and I'll explain why in a bit, but I want to get through this plugin section because I want to finish the setup for people who have never used KeePass. So we have this plugin, but the plugin by itself doesn't do anything. What we now need is an add-on. Now, add-ons are going to be different for each browser that you use. In this case, I'm going to show you Windows Edge, and then I'm going to show you Firefox a little bit later. So for Edge, what we want to do is to go to Extensions. Yep, we're opening up the Microsoft Edge add-on site. Search for KeePass. And now you will see that there's Edge KeePass, there's KeePass Connector-Edge, there's KeePass Helper Password Manager, there's Key, there's a bunch of different ones. If I remember right, I believe it's this one. I'm going to, all it says is Connect KeePass. Great. Yep, this is the one. Okay, so Edge KeePass in this case. It will specifically mention, note, you need KeePass HTTP or KeyWeb HTTP to get a secure connection between KeePass and Edge. And it gives you instructions on how to install it and video instructions in case if you're not watching this video. So we're going to just click Get. Add extension. Yes, it did say it can read data on all websites because it needs to be able to find out where the username and password fields are. And Edge KeePass has now been installed. So we now have an icon right here. And when I click on it, it says disconnected. And that's because we haven't told it to actually connect to a database. So we want to click connect. Waiting for confirmation, check if a KeePass window opened. And it is actually blinking down here. It's just that it's Windows 11 and it's really hard to see. And it pops up with this window that says KeePass HTTP confirm new key association. You only want to do this if you yourself initiated this connection, because this is basically a program reaching out to KeePass HTTP and going, hey, look, I want to access your password database. This is the least secure part of this entire thing. But it's still not that bad. Because yes, somebody could theoretically hijack your web browser and through the KeePass plugin get access to your password for the website that's currently open. So we're going to call this Edge. And now you will see over here, there's KeePass HTTP settings. And if you go into the details here, there's a little key being stored here specifically for what we called Edge. Minimize. And now it is connected as Edge. So we're going to go to mail.com. I'm just trying to come up with a website that will not actually require you to, confirm via email or anything like that. Wow, I've forgotten how bad the internet looks without an ad blocker. One moment, I'm going to quickly install an ad blocker. All right, and ads be gone. Still not a great site. So we're going to sign up for a account. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can use this, and I'm going to walk you through the way that I use it, which is I actually create the password in KeePass and then let it fill out this information. So from here, I would go into KeePass, which we're going to do, and we're going to create a new password. Now, you can set it into email, for instance, and you want to click this Add Entry button. We're going to call it test account for YouTube at mail.com. And by default, it's going to use this style of password, which is uppercase, lowercase, and number. Personally, I like also having symbols in there, and you can actually set it to do that automatically. And it's going to make it 20 characters in length. So that's our new password. That sounds great. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to look at this URL over here, and we're going to take the domain part of the URL, which is sign up, or the full domain, the FQDN, or fully qualified domain name. In this case, signup.mail.com. It's the part that's in black instead of gray, and we're going to paste it in here. Now, for some websites, and mail.com appears like it might be one of them, they might have a different sign-up URL compared to a regular URL. In that case, what you can do is that you can just have it be mail.com. That means it'll be available for mail.com and every subdomain. So signup.mail.com, grapes.mail.com, whatever you want. Every subdomain that has access to that. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. You'll notice that this automatically saved this time. And then what we're going to do is going to right-click, Chrome KeePass, redetect fields. Okay, so it actually did work, as I found out. It's just that Windows 11 is dumb, and it was actually blinking over here, and I didn't notice. These are going to pop up. Now, for some reason, there is a bug in KeePass HTTP where it pops up with 2 of these windows. You're going to want to select, only one of them will able to be selected. Easy way to tell is that I can't click on remember this decision or move that. It is also making a sound effect because this is default Windows 11. This one, I can move the window around and I can click remember this decision. This pops up specifically because we chose mail.com instead of signup.mail.com. KeePass recognizes this and goes, wait, this is probably right, but I want to make sure. So we're going to say, remember this decision and allow it. And we're going to say it twice. And now you will notice down here, it actually has the password. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like this version of basically Edge does not allow you to put in the password in whichever field that you want, unlike the Firefox version. So what I did was I started installing Firefox. So we're going to quickly show you Firefox as well. The process for installing the extension is very similar. So you're going to go to Add-ons and Themes, Extensions, and we're going to search for KeePass. Once more, there's multiple of these. The one that we specifically want is not listed. One moment. Nope, it is listed. This KeePass HTTP connector is what I use. It will give you a warning that's not actively being monitored for security by Mozilla. That's fine. You can tell from the reviews that this is perfectly fine, but keep in mind, this is just some person. So once more, we are having a slight risk here, but it's very slight because they can only access one URL at a time. We are adding this to Firefox. If you want, you can tell it that it can run in private windows. If you want it to run in private windows, go for it. And then we need to hit connect. This popped up down here. We're going to call this Firefox. Done. Now let's go to mail.com and do the stupid thing. Oh, right. I haven't set up an ad blocker. One moment. By the way, always run an ad blocker. I don't care if you want to support every website that you're looking at and want to look at their ads. You can allow list that. An ad blocker is basic security software at this point. Just run it, trust me. Anyway, we're going to sign up. And you'll notice that it just popped up down here saying, hey, look, we're receiving credentials. That's because we allowed it in Edge, and KeePass HTTP now goes, okay, so if this is something that's coming in from a browser and it's going with signup.mail.com, go ahead and allow it for the mail.com password. So now we can do things like fill in user and password, and it will fill in the username and password. Unfortunately, it included the @mail.com part, but that's fine. We can check to see if it's available. It is. We get to be other YouTube. We are going to live in... Sure, we'll live in the US, but we are going to live in Wyoming. And we're going to be born on the 1st in the year 2000. It will have the blank for choose a password. You'll notice that this is already filled out, but this one isn't. So if you click on here, it will give you the Firefox stuff. We don't care about the Firefox stuff. We specifically want to use KeePass. So all I did was hit right click, choose KeePass HTTP connector, and then fill pass only, and it fills it out. You can also click on this key, and this is actually a part of the KeePass plugin for Firefox, and it will generate a password. The reason why I don't do it this way is that I will forget that I've created a password this way, and then forget. You can, however. Password recovery options by email. I don't know. I'm not a robot, even though it's absolutely going to make me, yep, pass CAPTCHA. Those three look like bridges to me. All right, I agree. Create a password. Don't save. In this case, it was rejected because I put in a fake email address, but you get the idea as to what we're doing here. Wow, their website really hates me. Anyway, from now on, if we wanted to log into our mail account that obviously exists, we click on login, right-click, fill username and password. This is going to pop up because this is the first time that we're doing this from www. We want to remember the decision and allow it. And that's it. Now, every time that we have a password, we can fill it out this way. There are ways of doing password exports from other things and importing into KeePass itself. I'm not going to cover that because that would require me to have any passwords anywhere. You'll also notice that this is now unsaved. We want to save. We always want to save. I believe it might be under... Yeah, I can't remember now. It's been too many years since I did an import. But you can import passwords from, import, various formats. Like, for instance, a regular CSV file. You can import in from other password collections, which does include that online thing that I had mentioned. You can even import in from Google Chrome. You can import in from Firefox. You can import in from other things. You get the idea. Import in wherever your passwords are currently saved at. Highly recommended. Then you can have it run through the password analyzers and do everything for you. The other thing that I wanted to show off, now I wanted to talk briefly about why I trust this product over why I would trust something like LastPass, which I don't and never have. So, how to explain? LastPass is a cloud-based service that is presented to people for free and to enterprises for a small nominal fee. The whole point of the site is to store people's password credentials, which makes it, one, an extremely large target, to put it mildly, and two, the thing about KeePass and what you can see is that, I mean, let me go back to documents. This is the database. It is 3 kilobytes. This is encrypted. Yes, somebody could throw a crap ton of passwords at it, which I already showed you one way of eliminating that potential problem, but somebody could throw a crap ton of passwords at it to get at it. But they have to get at the file itself in order to even start having a chance. It's not like they can break through your web browser. The most that they could get at absolute worst would be one website at a time. And only the website that they're breaking in from, for instance, which is not really all that useful and not something that somebody who's trying to hacksaw you specifically would bother trying to do. Like, they would have to, for instance, if you had your banking credentials on there, they would actually have to break into your bank's website, or at the very least make your computer think that it's your bank's website. That's a common thing. And then pull your passwords from KeePass HTTP that way, assuming that you gave it said password. If they've gone through that much effort, if you're not using KeePass and you're just using, let's say you have a perfect memory, an didactic memory, and you have unique passwords for everything, you see that banking website that you pulled up presumably because you want to visit your bank, you're going to type in the credentials anyway. They're still going to get your password. Something like LastPass or any of the other cloud-hosted password databases, again, one, gigantic target, to put it mildly, and two, they're communicating with you through your web browser. So it's not just a matter of, hey, look, that there's this plugin for the web browser that's going to be grabbing things from the current URL. They could theoretically install an extension in your web browser to scrape the entire screen of LastPass instead. That would be a much easier way of targeting an individual. Or they'll do what they did earlier as per the news article, which is right there, and just take everybody's vaults. This is why I do not trust cloud things, especially when it's a cloud thing that I do not own the cloud. I don't own LastPass. It's a free service for me, which means that LastPass is treating me as the product, not the customer. Either it's going to cost something in money, cost something in time. Like, it took time to set up KeePass. I'm not going to say that it's free because it didn't cost any money. It is free because it cost a little bit of your time. But I'm the product if I was using LastPass. They're going to try to market me more and more services. Their incentive is to make sure that nobody finds out about a security leak, not to prevent it from happening. Admittedly, they have some incentive for preventing it from happening because, one, corporate customers are going to sue the crap out of them, and two, it makes them look bad. I mean, who's going to be using LastPass after this, right? Well, there's still going to be people because this isn't the first time LastPass got broken into. Anyway, what am I trying to say? LastPass is a bad idea for a lot of reasons that a lot of people can look at and go, that sounds sketchy. You're giving your passwords to presumably very personal information that include username, password, and URL. So everything that you need in order to impersonate you to this random website. KeePass, or similar products to it, I'm not necessarily saying you should use KeePass specifically, is an open source product. They even have a trust page that gives the fact that, hey, look, that this is a, where was that at? Recommended password manager by the BSI Security, German Federal Office for IT Agents, or IT Security, recommended by the Swiss, recommended by the French, sponsored by the European Commission. It's been actually audited by said European Commission, which means that they've had third-party independent security researchers looking at the code of KeePass, which, by the way, is open source. Anybody can theoretically look at the code of KeePass. Admittedly, most people aren't going to understand anything on it, but it's there. You could just look at it. Yeah. I trust KeePass way more, especially since I control where that password database is. If I want it on this flash drive here, and I do not want it on any computer whatsoever, I can do that. If I want to save it onto my own cloud service, here, I will show you, because I have my own cloud service. So I can copy, go to my Nextcloud, which is a self-hosted cloud-based thing. Think of it like Dropbox, if you're familiar with Dropbox, where it's a cloud-hosted storage that you can save to and have other devices read and write to. In this case, cloud-hosted just means my computer downstairs in my basement, because I'm a nerd. But you can save this on any storage. You can use any synchronization technology that you want. So SyncThing would be a good example. I'm not going to show you how SyncThing works, just like I'm not showing you how Nextcloud works. But SyncThing allows you to synchronize files between computers. So if you use multiple computers, that would be a good way of doing it. Plus, it's a good backup. This is the reason why I have 17 copies of my KeePass database. It's literally on every single one of my devices. And it's kept up to date. So there we go. Let's switch over to an Ubuntu machine. This is running a version of Linux called Ubuntu 2204. It's a relatively recent version of Ubuntu, which is one of the main Linux distros and blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about Linux today anyway. Point is, I have this synchronized via Nextcloud, YouTube test folder, and we have our database that we can just double click and open. We don't actually have a file association for here right now. KeePass. We don't have KeePass installed. That would help, wouldn't it? One moment. All right, now that it's actually installed, let's go ahead and open it up with KeePass. It once more asks us for our password, which is Walking in 17 Winter Wonderlands. There we go. And there's our password, complete with that whole test email account that we created. From here, we can open up Firefox. Keep in mind, we're still going to need to copy in the plugin to make the automatic plugin work. I'm not going to do that for now, but Firefox with the correct extension would be able to read this password. We have it synchronized. I highly recommend keeping it synchronized. And what you can do is that, yeah, I know, I don't care. This is obviously just me throwing together something pretty quick, so apologies for the appearance. This isn't even my normal distribution of Linux, but it's the most common one. If you modify it here and hit save, with the synchronization, it will come up over here. I'm only demonstrating because my sync isn't working quite properly right now on the Linux machine. I don't know why. And when you try to interact with something or when you try to click save, it'll pop up saying, hey, look, this file's been modified. Would you like to synchronize it? And it'll end up looking like this. Oh, it just did it automatically. Basically, it'll ask you whether you want to sync it or replace it. You always want to sync it. That way, all of your passwords merge together and everything is happy. I even have this running on my phone, for instance. Let's see how much I can show you from my phone without revealing any of my passwords. One moment. Nope, can't make it work without showing off password information. So I use a program called KeePass to Android, and it works really well. I have it set to open up my file from Nextcloud, so everything's synchronized properly. And this way I have my passwords on my Android phone right here. The main thing to note when it comes to Android is that Google likes changing things on a very regular basis. If you don't have a phone that is using at least Android 11 or newer, there's really funky things with the way KeePass runs, or any other password manager for that matter. If you have a new enough phone, it's not going to be that big of a deal, and it will insert in passwords just like KeePass HTTP does on web browsers. There are other programs that can work for this as well. It's not just KeePass, it's just the one that I use, and it's the one that I'm familiar with. So I hope this long diatribe is useful for somebody. There was something else I was going to cover, wasn't there? One moment. Most important part of all, why in the world would you do this instead of just using a small set of passwords that you can either rotate between or just have one site use one password, another site use a different password? That way you're only remembering like 6 or 7 passwords instead of 550 like I have to. It's because that's a horrible, terrible practice. And no, it does not matter if it's just your Neopets password. Let me explain. So let's say that you are using your same password everywhere. This is the worst case scenario. You use password 123 as your password everywhere for everything, no matter what. If any website that you use that password for, any service at all, gets broken into, and they don't happen to have the greatest in the way of password security, where they're, say, for instance, using what's referred to as two-way encryption, which means that they can actually get your password out of the database, or that they are not salting their hashes appropriately, or lots and lots and lots of other ways. All they have to do is get at one of your passwords, and you can now effectively consider every single account that you own, every one of them, to be breached. Because the first thing that a hacker is going to do is take that password and apply it to every major bank. Using the same password everywhere just means that you're that much less secure. This is, in fact, what happened to me 22-ish years ago for GameFAQs, is that at the time I was using the same password everywhere. I was actually migrating away from that. And when I became a moderator, I had actually changed my password on that site. However, GameFAQs' security at the time did not log everybody out of the site when the password changed, which meant that somebody was still in my account because I just didn't log out. Also, if somebody has your email address password, which might be the same as your password on insert other website here, then they can start using that account for malicious purposes and affect other people and not just you. So by having really crappy password security, you're not just affecting yourself, you're really screwing things up for a lot of people potentially. Somebody can go log into your email account, grab your entire address book, and then start trying to do phishing scams against your family and loved ones, or your friends, or random people that you've been chatting with, or anything like that. Or start hijacking your social media accounts, or lots and lots and lots of other things. Do not reuse your passwords like that. And yes, using 5 or 6 passwords instead of one password mitigates this a little. So let's say the average person has 50 websites that they actually keep their credentials for. And they want to remember all of them. They're not using a password manager of any variety. They don't trust them, or they don't want to deal with the hassle or anything like that. And they're going to use, let's say, one password for everything. Well, any one of those 100 sites going boom and allowing a malicious actor in order to have your credentials is going to effectively mean that all 100 are taken out by having, or I said, yeah, I did say 100. Or did I say 50? I've already forgotten my example. We'll say the example is 100. That means all 100 is taken out. If you were instead using 5 passwords, then they're only able to take out 1/5 of your accounts. That's still a huge number. Why in the world are you letting that happen? Not to mention, how are you remembering which password is which? Are you using the same password for all of your medical accounts? Well, I have some bad news for you. A lot of online medical things have had their password databases breached. A good site for trying to figure out what breaches have exist is haveibeenpwned.com. It's a service that generally I would recommend people sign up for anyway, where you give them your email address and they let you know when your email address gets found among various pastes of online accounts and so on. It's very useful to know when a site has been hijacked and nobody's told them. Or not hijacked, but broken into. And nobody's told you about it. Rotating through 5 passwords, that's still the same problem. You're just making it smaller, which is better, but it's still the same problem. And okay, what other sites use your Neopets password? Are any of those your email address? How about a previous password? Because some email accounts, if you log in with a previous password, it will actually pop up saying, hey, look, this is a previous password of yours. Would you like to change it? Or would you like to reset your password? So you can get access to accounts that way too. Usually that's only for relatively recent password changes, but I caught Google doing it for a couple of years, I think. Okay, what about having, the ideal would be having unique passwords everywhere, but obviously, I mean, if you have 50 or 100 different sites that you use, I'm not going to remember that. For reference, I do actually use some passwords that I do remember. It's not entirely complete random strings of uppercase, lowercase numbers and symbols. Some of them are phrases that I actually remember, like, for instance, my KeePass database itself, but anything that I need in order to reach my KeePass database, for an example. And all of those are unique, but now I only need, like, to remember 3 or 4 passwords. Plus work passwords, unfortunately. But I think you get the point. The point is that it's not very viable in the current online environment for people who use more than just 2 or 3 websites to remember all of their passwords. So either it leads to password reuse, which causes lots and lots of security issues, or you need some type of password system, even if that is writing things down in a notebook. This is not a notebook. This is the manual for my pet feeder. You need something. And this is where things like LastPass come into play, where they go, hey, look, you give us all of your passwords and we'll handle everything for you for free. Alarm bells should be ringing at that point. Or for a nominal fee. Sweet, but who's to say that their controls are good? Who's to say that nobody can break into their site and steal a bunch of credentials? Like what actually happened to LastPass? By using an offline password manager, or even if you're putting it online rather than using an existing service online, or even if you just put it in your own Dropbox or your own OneDrive or your own cloud service, at least then somebody needs access to, or somebody needs to know that your password database is there in order to be able to grab it. Even if the IT department of Dropbox screws up horribly and gives everybody's Dropbox stuff, your password database is probably the most secure thing on there because it itself is encrypted. Whereas for LastPass, there has to be some type of two-way encryption because otherwise they couldn't get at your passwords. So two-way encryption means that, I should probably explain, one-way encryption is basically, I'm going to have this thing and encrypt it. It goes one way, you can't really get it back the other direction. What you end up with is a hash. And a website will compare that hash to the hash that they have in a database and go, yeah, these hashes match, cool. And the website never actually knows your password. Two-way encryption, on the other hand, is the website is probably storing your password, and you're sending your password encrypted, and then the website decrypts the password and goes, okay, yeah, these passwords are the same. You have to use two-way encryption whenever you need the actual password, which a password manager would be using two-way encryption. So you're having an online service that has to store a password somewhere. Whether that is a master password or a master hash or whatever you want to refer to it as, or they are storing the actual credentials in plain text somewhere, which is way worse, or lots of other things. I am getting off topic. Poor editor me. Poor editor me. Okay. Point is, use some type of password mechanism. A password database, or a notepad, or a sticky note stuck to the back of your keyboard. Something that makes it where your password database isn't literally listed as a password database online with everybody else's password database. Don't store your passwords with Firefox or Chrome. Once upon a time, for reference, Chrome wasn't encrypting your passwords at all, and it's still possible to get at your passwords from Chrome without needing your credentials, last I knew. And I'm assuming something similar with Firefox. I don't know for sure one way or the other. Don't save them in your browser. Don't save them to an online service like LastPass. Use something like KeePass. Use something that you can actually trust everywhere that it's being stored at, even if that somewhere is a notepad next to your mouse. Anyway, I've been recording this for almost 2 hours now. I hope you've enjoyed this, Internet, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye. Oh, and have a happy holiday, because it'll be Christmas Day here in 4 hours. Bye.